I'm reading on Napoleon Bonaparte from Wikipedia. In 1798, he led a military expedition to Egypt that served as a springboard to political power. He orchestrated a coup in November 1799 and he became first consul of the Republic. His ambition and public approval inspired him to go further, and he became the first emperor of the French in 1804. Intractable differences with the British meant that the French were facing a third coalition by 1805. Napoleon shattered this coalition with decisive victories in the Ulm campaign and historic triumph over the Russian Empire and the Austrian Empire at the Battle of Austerlitz, which led to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. What happens if Napoleon never defeated the Russian Empire and the Austrian Empire?
The burning of the Library of Alexandria, that which is deleted by fire throughout history. Alexandria was founded in Egypt by Alexander the Great. His successor, Pharaoh Ptolemy Soter, founded the museum, also called the Museum of Alexandria, or Royal Library of Alexandria, in 283 BC. The museum was a shrine of the Muses, modeled after the Lyceum of Aristotle in Athens. The museum was a place of study which included lecture areas, gardens, a zoo, shrines for each of the 9 Muses, as well as the library itself. It has been estimated that at one time the Library of Alexandria held over 500,000 documents from Assyria, Greece, Persia, Egypt, India, and many other nations. Over 100 scholars lived at the museum full-time to perform research, write lecture, or translate and copy documents. The library was so large it actually had another branch or daughter library at the Temple of Serapis. When you have large data that is deleted by fire, erasure from the face of the earth, by dominators, what does that say for the hologram? We're finding out today.
This is parallel Earth, parallel universe, and parallel reality. This is Spiritus Holographica. I'm your host, Wolfman Joe, and this is
Ricky Bearhart here.
And on tonight's podcast, we have 2 very compelling stories that changed the face of history. One with burning of important documents, and the other victory over Austrian and Russian Empire. And we'll explain how that compels during this podcast.
So the main informant of culture is the data, the art and the literature, the science of an era, and the notion of all of those 500,000 documents from around the ancient world. There have been many, many great libraries and many historic erasures committed by fire. In ancient times, the city of Heliopolis was destroyed. Then you have the founding of Alexandria, and then later Alexandria itself was destroyed. And many Caesars sacked and destroyed temples and went back and forth. But there's erasure of another kind in the hologram, projecting forward. There's a recent movie that came out called it's the Blade Runner sequel. I'll put it to you that way. I forget what it is, Blade Runner 20-something, 2050-something. And basically, there's a blackout in that occurs where they lose records, like the internet hiccups. You remember in the old days when they talked about Y2K, when it was turning from 1999 to 2000. Well, in this sci-fi movie, they lose a massive amount of history. It just goes bye-bye because of a data breach. Now, we began by saying, fire. What if it's erased by fire? But either a computer virus has a flashpoint, like any other event, or a solar flare of such magnitude where it could partially disintegrate our information infrastructure. And what would that have to do with us now, rather than a tyrannical dominator like a Caesar or an Alexander?
I want to just touch on this topic for a little bit, then you can get back.
That sounds great.
When you're mentioning deletion of documents,
Deletion of information,
you're mentioning that, there's something that comes to mind, and that's the deletion or the burning of books.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, how they were all throwing books in and getting rid of that knowledge or whatever, and some felt that was the best way to do, but imagine the information that was lost in that.
Well, it's a different scale, but it's a similar hysteria. It's a similar dominion scheme. They think that by destroying those things, that they're purging them from the earth, or they're somehow making a statement. And, you know, they don't know it, but it's the very basis for fire magic, to commit something to obliteration by the flames. Now, the Caesars did this for dominion.
And I might be going on a limb with this, but
we're all about that here, right?
Just recently, they were destroying old statues and like everything else, and just trying to damage that. But something like that could be priceless.
Well, I've noticed stuff like that too that's going on all over the place. I mean, in this particular case, it is happening in the Middle East. There's a lot of archaeological digs that are being destroyed by various sects, and whether it's in the 50s, whether it's a Caesar, whether it's a caliphate, whether it's Alexander the Great, I think the destruction of information knowingly, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a crime. Especially if it's useful, functional information. I mean, it's different if it's an accidental malfunction of the computer, or a virus that's out of control, or a solar flare. But it's the effect on culture, the information being wiped out, and what that does to subsequent generations, how it sets things back. There's power vacuums, and there's information vacuums. They say knowledge is power, but the power vacuum could be a dark age, or a missing 411 of data that's controlled. But you don't control with fire, you annihilate with fire.
Oh yeah, it is. It's like some kind of a magic in a way.
Yeah, and the thing is thinking about that. I'm thinking about fire magic. And if you think about it in the sense that you could lose entire historic periods to fire, and what have we lost? And there's many people that accuse history of being severely rewritten. But getting on to the information of knowledge vacuum versus power vacuum, when you have something like the Frankish and the Austro-Hungarian Empire facing each other, when one wins or loses, there's inevitably going to be a power vacuum.
Here's one thing that I wanted to discuss about that. And this would have implications of Europe history and implications of American history, too.
The global history would be holographically edited by this.
Holographic. Let's just say you have France losing or Napoleon losing that war. Austrian and Russian Empire take over.
Imagine if they were in harmony with each other.
They were in harmony with each other. They would have seized the Louisiana Purchase territory.
If you assume that they would then crush Europa and take it for their own.
Yes.
By the long-standing occupation of the ancient Islamic world of Mediterranean and the southern parts of Europe, when it then moved on. If Byzantium was intact and it was the Western Roman Empire that collapsed and shattered, Rome would have been de-emphasized. France would have been de-emphasized during the Templar era. So you would have had the bank started in Eastern Europe, with maybe the Tsar still being in power.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with the whole spice road in all of Asia, and a country that would have access to the Aegean and a power monopoly of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a huge amount of power to the point of where you could have easily had a naval presence all over the world. I mean, the British Empire may never have become anything.
No.
It may have been a Mediterranean, Byzantine naval power. And as you say, instead of France or like French colonies or Spanish colonies or British colonies, it may have been, an extension of Byzantium.
But what would the landscape be in around the world, let's just say, roughly 100 years down the road?
Well, if you think about it, you would have had a whole other type of Christianity. And what does it say for the Reformation?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't have had the same situation with Martin Luther and the Lutheran Reformation, because if it wasn't Catholic, like, I'm questioning when did the Orthodox churches have such a thing as indulgences? Did they ever have? I guess I have to bone up on my history of the Eastern Roman Empire.
See, if anything, this is what I know.
Yeah.
From this source. Like, the Orthodox was declared their independence from the Catholic Church, or broke off before anyone. They were the first. They had the same thing, but they broke off. And they did their mass their way.
Yes.
And they had their set there. So it's possible that America would have been Orthodox.
But then again, the issue of Protestantism. The original reason, I mean, first of all, they escaped Europe for a lot of reasons. The Reformation led to the Inquisition and etc., the Jesuit order, all the hydraulic despotism and dogmatism that arose from the power grab that Rome had in Europe. Now, the fact of the matter is if there was no Western Roman Empire, if that